Yeah, I'm Nick. I've been designing Dungeons and Dragons Onslaught for the last 4 years about. It just came out earlier this year, but I do operate under Wizkids Games, where I do some freelance. I used to self-publish a couple games, but I realized I didn't like the publishing side of it, and so I enjoy the designing part. So now I'm just working with other companies to get my games out. It's just always something that's been on my bucket list. So about 10 years ago, I designed my first game. It was like a small little card game, and it did all right. Like I ran the Kickstarter, I did everything, and it was a fun experience. And I guess I just got the game design bug and have never stopped since. And I think that's true for a lot of hardcore gamers. You have an idea for a game, but game design is iterative. It takes a lot of time and effort. So the idea is nice to have, but it's really the final product that makes the difference. So I ended up sticking with it. We actually, Travis and I were actually invited to take part of a pitch. It was actually a closed door process. Wizards of the Coast, right, who makes Dungeons and Dragons, they were interested in kind of having a skirmish game again, because it's been a few years. The last one, the D&D miniatures game, since they stopped making that, so they wanted to put out another one. So they asked people who had experience within skirmish realm, and adventure tactics fit that mold, and so we were on that list of people who got invited. So we didn't say, hey, I want to make a Dungeons and Dragons game. We were asked to pitch our idea of one. So I don't know who else was involved. I heard it was very competitive, like it was other designers. We were probably the newest team, right? This will be Travis's first official credit. Like he worked on a lot of different games, but as a developer or as a tester, but this is his first design credit. And Adventure Tactics was a nice hit, but it wasn't like Dungeons and Dragons. Pretty different on a small scale, but at a high level, I think the game that we designed is still the core essence of what's in Onslaught now. And I think that's actually what helped us win that pitch. I'm sure there were other veteran designers who have much better resumes than us who participated in that. But we had a working prototype almost from the very beginning, which if you played it, you'd be like, oh, that's a lot like D&D Onslaught, right? Because the core ideas were still all there. It's in my home office. It's very primitive, but it does exist. Yeah, I still have a lot of my old prototypes. My wife is really pushing me to throw them out. But that one's easy for me, and I'll tell you, it's Red Wizards, because I think they're very tough to play, especially if you're new to the game. So I wouldn't recommend them for a novice. But they have they have both a high skill floor and high skill ceiling, right? But because when you get them to work, it just feels great. It's probably Dralm, the sellsword, the turtle.
I love drawing.
Yeah. Like I love a lot of the WizKids sculpts, but their turtles are all very like peaceful, like monks and like sages. And I'm like, we need like a cool brawler turtle. And like he's like a snapping turtle, he's got a spiked shell. Like he looks like a rough and tumble fighter, which is exactly what we wanted. So we started in the Forgotten Realms, right? That's classic Dungeons and Dragons. But there are so many great settings. Eberron would be one of my favorites because I love I would love to also be doing our Warforged. I think Spelljammer would be cool if we did ship-to-ship combat. I know Travis loves Dark Sun. I don't know if Wizards will ever go back to Dark Sun, but I know that's one of his personal favorites in terms of settings. It's really cool. And then we could do like, well, I guess if we did Spelljammer, you could still do like Thackeray and stuff too. But I would also like to do more co-op. That might be on the horizon. But our original pitch actually included co-op, but we were actually told not to do that. So, but now that the game is out and it seems to be doing well and they want to continue to support it, that could potentially be back on the table. It's been interesting because WizKids and Wizards of the Coast obviously have a very good relationship, right? Because they've been working together for years, and WizKids has been making the official minis. So that part's easy. Like getting in contact with them is easy. but they do have final say over everything, and they're a big company, so sometimes the review can take a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and that's very different as working like a solo designer where I'm like, I'll just put this in the game, that's fine, and next day that's fine. This way, we make through these changes, and so the trick is to get multiple things in the pipeline at once, so you're not just waiting, okay, I made this one change, now I have to wait 3 weeks before I can do something else. So that's been an adjustment. Oh, it's a while because it goes first Wizards has to approve, and then it goes through sculpting, and we'll write the art brief, right, and then it goes to the artists and the sculptors, and then it comes back, so you're talking months. There's a pipeline of anywhere from 3 to 6 months from an initial design that we come up with to even seeing like a 3D render of the mini. Well, it actually just happened. We exposed people to the first time today for the betrayal scenario. There's just so much cool design space you can do in the skirmish game when there's multiple characters. But this one, each character, right, has that token that represents them, and you secretly protect a couple, and you pick one from the other team, and that character, you can pick a traitor for the other team. So it opens up a lot of cool things, like especially across factions, you might have access to a character you normally wouldn't be able to play. So, and there's a little bit of a head game between the two players as they pick who's going to be the traitor to the other side. So for me, that's one of my favorite mechanics, and the players seem to really appreciate it too. That's tough to answer because we've been playing weekly basically for the last 4 years. And early on, we'd play multiple times per week too. At this point, we know how things are going to go, so once a week is okay. So I mean, it's in the hundreds. Like I've probably played Magic the Gathering more, but this is probably second. This is probably now my second most played game. Well, and I think the people who are most playing Onslaught is probably that play at home crowd. But we also want to have we want to make sure that we offer enough that's deep mechanically, so that we have competitive players. And we met a lot of those, at the tournament today, and also at Gen Con. So we're kind of slowly building up that competitive scene. And we actually want to bring a lot of them in as playtesters too, so we can ask them directly. What are you looking for? What do you think is too good? What's not good enough? So we do want to develop that, because what you find is when you develop and you balance around the competitive players, you can make sure that there's nothing that's completely broken, and that will in the end make the game better for the casual players too. Dream would be just like HeroClix, we have another big room, right? That's just for Onslaught. That would be the dream. But I know we're probably a couple of years away from that, because you have to grow the community organically. You have to make sure all the local stores are supporting it. So that's why I'm hopeful. The next month that the construct comes out, and that'll be our first organized play offering, other than just kind of like the special sculpts and foil cards. It's the first double unit for Onslaught, so it's going to count as two characters. When it's bloodied or when it's half, it goes down to 1 activation. So you don't when you have a lot of these double units in games, it's so all or nothing, right? Or in HeroClix, you have a Batman that's 300 points or whatever. You lose him, and then that's basically it, right? But for this one, he gets 2 activations, so it's a double unit. It's big, but when it's hurt, it goes down to 1. So you didn't lose it completely. You can still use it. So that was double units are a tricky balance thing, but we wanted to make sure we looked at other games, we tried to learn from those lessons. But I also just love how customizable it is. It's obviously got a bunch of different abilities based on how you can customize it. But from a toyetic standpoint, right? It's really cool because the head pops off, the arms pop off, put different weapons on. So it's a fun thing. It's just a really cool product. That is a very classic D&D monster. One of the old modules for the original D&D was called Expedition at Barrier Peaks, and the big boss in that was a froghemoth. So this is the one that we've been eyeing for a while. I wanted to bring in other cool parts. Barrier Peaks is the first time they tried to mix sci-fi with fantasy. There's robots, there's laser guns. So they probably wouldn't let us do any of that, but they did let us do the froghemoth. Yeah, everyone knows Chloe's good. Grapple Shanks is good. I think we saw a little bit of. I think people started to get wise to how good Zook is from the Red Wizards, because he can steal loot, he can steal an ability, he does pretty good damage. So I think people are understanding now that he's very good. But prior to Gen Con, I think people were sleeping on him a little bit. Some of the early games, you start big, you start wild, and then you start paring down. But there were some, not infinite combos, but there were like some more very crazy big hits. So we took a lot of those out, and the Zentarum originally had a lot more movement too, and we actually pared some of that down. They're already the most mobile team by far, but they were even more. The monk, her default, she goes up to 6 when she's bloodied, but she starts at 5. Originally it was the other way around. She was 6 and then goes on to 5, but her at 6 speed ended up breaking so many scenarios. We were like, okay, well, if we change this and do this, but we realized we were designing so many scenarios just to avoid that 6 speed. So we're like, never mind, we'll make her 5. She can get the 6 when she's bloodied. At that point, it's not going to be broken because the board will have developed, right? Yeah, and it's understandable. Like the MRCP is 140 for the core. That's a lot to ask of a player, right? But for people who are used to minis and buying minis, if you look at what's actually in the game, they're like, oh, that's very reasonable, right? Because the Black Dragon and that would normally be like $50, $70, right? Just by itself. And then you have 21 minis, all pre-painted. So the miniature players get it, but you want to get the casual players too. And so we have a smaller starter offering that's coming within the next year to try to entice people to get into the system. And if they want to do more, they can buy more, right? But the core set, your first entry to the system, it should be a lower cost entry. So that's one thing we realized, and you'll see a kind of like a starter product soon. It hasn't been announced yet, but it's coming soon. I think you want to slowly add more. You want to add some to the pool, but you don't want to just completely change it, right? Because then people feel like it's hard to keep up. So I think we do want to keep it evolving, but we don't want to just throw like 10 new scenarios every time something comes up. Or sometimes it might just be a new map, but it's a concept you're already familiar with, right? We do contention on the new map, right? Capture, but on the new map, things of that nature. Well, I mean, I hope I'm still working on it. I hope I'm still interested in it, and other people are still interested in it. So, I mean, the dream is that I'm still working on this in 5 years, and that we have new settings, not just new characters, but new settings, new monsters, new maps, all the cool stuff. Co-op, maybe some more solo scenarios. Those are fun, and there's a lot of people. So I think the space system is strong enough, the mechanics are cool, that you can apply it for a lot of different things.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of the community, like, I'm unbelievably appreciative how communicative you are with it.
Thanks.
Interacting with the community on the Discord, being open, just talking about, hey, this is coming, oh, great idea. Help answering questions, like you don't get that from a lot of game designers. Just like, oh, I can throw that on the Discord, and he would know. He helped design the game, right? Like, that's super awesome. So I just want to say thank you.
Well,
One, thank you for doing the interview, and thanks for being so open and out there about the game. I think that is key for helping a game grow. It's like, hey, it isn't just we make the game, push it
right,
out
put
there.
it on the universe, yeah.
It's like every so often we'll change something because we want to. Like having that back and forth really helps, I think.
Well,
Thank
thanks.
you so much. And,
Thank you.
Thanks for a wonderful world. So I think this was a great time at Onslaught. I had a great time playing today. So
Great.
Thanks for doing the interview.
You're welcome. Thank you.